Hello, folks. Rebecca Adams here. And of course, I have Becky Vermeer here. Who else would I have? Say hello, Becky.
Oh, how are
Doing okay. Doing all right.
That's good.
I am going to fire this stage manager. Do you
Uh-oh.
know that last night, right before bed, she was vacuuming the stage?
What?
I mean, like, hello.
That
Yeah,
doesn't even make sense.
I know. I know. So I know I've said before I'm going to fire her, but I have to.
I think it's time for a new stage manager.
I think so too. The
Is
thing is,
Bubbles your stage manager?
that would be pretty bad. No, she contributes to the stuff on the floor though.
Oh, because I was kind of impressed if it was Bubbles and she was vacuuming. I was thinking on second thought, maybe keep her around because that's pretty cool.
I know it would be, wouldn't it? Can't you just see her? Wouldn't she be cute hanging onto a little toy-sized vacuum, walking around on her hind legs?
I have a pretty good picture of that in my head.
I know, I do too. It doesn't take much imagination for me to come up with stuff like that.
I like it.
I do too. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce what we're doing tonight, and then I will share my screen since I've
Okay.
had issues.
So, well, tonight I kind of wanted us to talk a little bit about empowerment through advocacy. I think that's the title of this. What do we call it? A podcast? This is the title of this video, whatever it is.
You know, if anybody out there could let us know what the difference is between a podcast and a video on a YouTube channel, I would love to know, because I've had people say, "So do you have a podcast?" I don't know. We have a YouTube channel and we do videos. Oh.
I mean, it feels a little bit like a podcast, but
Yeah,
we could just call it that. It's a podcast that airs on YouTube. How about that?
there we go. That
That
works.
covers all the bases, right?
That does.
Well, here's the difference though. Most of the podcasts that I listen to are not videos, they're just people talking.
But I see, I'm listening to them, of course, when I work during the day, but they are videos. You can see people, you see them talking and moving and waving their hands and all that stuff, but it's called a podcast and not a video. So
Okay.
it's not just listening. So that's what I thought too. So I'm really confused as to what the difference is, but oh well.
Let's get all trendy and current and call it a podcast.
Ooh, boy, that's upscale.
I know.
Should I put on my gold watch for that?
No. No, but I do think we should be trendy and current. So
Okay,
let's make it official. May 1st, 2023. This is a podcast.
I like
Now
that.
this episode might not air on May 1st, 2023, but it's officially a podcast today.
Okay, so I'm going to
That's
put that
today's
down.
date.
Beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That
It's easier
sounds
to
like a
say
plan.
than YouTube video.
There you go. It is.
I'm all about shortcuts.
Oh, me too. Me too. You work for the government long enough, you learn that the alphabet soup is faster to say than the whole long title.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So anyway, going back to the topic, we decided to talk a little bit about empowerment being the root core of advocacy and what does empowerment through advocacy look like. So before we jump into our topic, I'm going to quiz you.
Oh boy.
If you had to define the word empowerment, how would you define it?
I could give you a word picture.
I like pictures.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be a real definition.
It's open to your interpretation. What is empowerment?
Okay, to me, I see it as to the change that has occurred in me over 20 years. In that I was a scared little mouse. I got out, I escaped from my abusive situation, and then I became educated on what I had been through and what I can make my future look like if I want to. And I have done a lot of work on myself, and I am becoming more assertive in situations. So I think I would sum it up like that. How
Okay.
close do I come on that?
You know, here's a funny thing about that. One of the questions that we ask everybody who applies for a job at the Crisis Center is, what is your definition of empowerment? And to this day, we have never gotten the same answer twice.
Oh, wow. Okay. I feel
And
better.
so I always say to people, I don't necessarily believe when I ask you this question, there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I'm not looking for anything specific. I'm just looking for your opinion. So there
Well,
you
you
go.
got my opinion. So
There you go. So, mine, you've heard me say in the past, working with people who coming out of crisis situations, when they're escaping from an abuser and everything feels hopeless, there's no hope there. And the thought of even goal planning feels hopeless. And then working to achieve those goals, how do I possibly do that? I've used this word picture frequently. We've talked about it multiple times, where I always say to people, I'm going to be the light at the end of the tunnel person. Because where I stand today, I can see the light, but I know that you can't. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to walk with you through that tunnel until you tell me that you can see the light. And then when you can see the light, I'm going to gently nudge you to keep walking on that tunnel. And I'm going to start taking some steps backward because you don't need me anymore. And to me, that's empowerment.
I love it. I like that.
So there's all kinds of different ways that you can define it, I think. But I do feel like someone who's coming out of an abusive situation, having an advocate be there to be available to help through that process. I don't know if it's mandatory, but it is sure darn helpful.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I could have made it to where I am now if it wasn't for you and your advocates. I really don't, because it just helped steer me, along the right course. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I feel like it's a good idea to talk about this tonight. There's a quote in the Nature and Dynamics of Domestic Violence that the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence published. And it's a quote from a survivor of domestic violence that I kind of want to share with you. I do want to share it with you.
Go for it.
So it's talking about having an advocate and what a difference that person could make as you're going through this healing process. You cannot emerge a whole human being when you escape someone who constantly beats you and berates you physically, emotionally, and spiritually until that searing of the soul has been attended to. There is something that happens to the psyche. The wholeness of the individual must be looked at. They must begin to understand what has happened to them and why. If you're the one that's trying to be the survivor, that's currently the victim, trying to move into the survivor status, defining what has happened to me and why is paramount. But if I've been physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually abused, how can I define that?
No.
You can't.
No.
And so that's where having an advocate walk through this process with you is very beneficial. And so one thing I'll talk about before we get to the wheel that we're going to talk about, we have a shorthand version. Those of us who are advocates, as we go through training, we have a shorthand version of how we assist survivors of domestic violence. And we call it the LIFE process, LIFE. And LIFE is an acronym that stands for Listen, Inform, Facilitate, Empower, and Assist, LIFE. And so when we talk about listening implies a lot more than just hearing what a person is saying. Like when you have a conversation with somebody, what cues you in to know that they really are listening to you?
Eye contact and maybe taking notes. Very engaged. I'm very impressed with how you and your advocates do it. I mean, there is like almost no loss of eye contact. And I love that, because then I know you are really, really absorbed in what I'm saying and how I'm saying it.
And another thing that I'm doing right now, because if I've watched myself on some of these videos that we've done, and I'm constantly nodding my head. But I'm constantly nodding my head when I'm sitting in a training, and I'm constantly nodding my head when I'm listening to somebody, because I'm actively trying to show that person I am listening to you.
Yep.
And I'm not just listening to you to come up with something to say next. I'm listening to you to hear what you have to say.
Mhm.
And so for us as advocates, when we're talking about that listening thing, the first thing that we have to do is provide a safe place for that person to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So if I'm going through a life-changing crisis and my world has just crumbled around me, I'm not going to stand in Walmart and tell you my life story.
Mm-mm.
That's not a safe place.
No.
Or when someone comes to the crisis center and they first walk in, the entryway into the crisis center walks into the living room of our office. I'm not going to stand in the living room and start telling my story so everybody in the building can hear me and everybody who walks through can hear me. So we
Mm-mm.
need to establish that safe space.
Mhm.
Then what we have to do is we have to make sure that we give that person time to be comfortable in the safe space that we've created.
Mhm.
And so if you just walk in and I say, okay, well, I want to hear everything there is about you.
Yeah.
Where's the niceties, right? Like
Mhm.
let's chat for a little bit. You and I do it before we record a program. We
Mhm.
know that the focus of getting together is to have a conversation that we're going to record and hopefully
Mhm.
educate people with. But we do our niceties. We check in with each other. How are you today?
Yeah.
How have things been? What's going
Mhm.
on? Where are you at? Then we're comfortable. Now we've got all
Mhm.
that out of the way. Now we're ready to talk.
Mhm.
And I feel like we need to do that as well when we're working with somebody coming out of a crisis situation.
Mhm.
Let's get comfortable with each other. Let's get feel like we're safe.
Mhm.
And then so the next thing that we do when we're talking about listening is we don't ask yes or no questions. Because well, I mean, you can ask yes or no questions, but if you're really wanting somebody to get into the details of what's going on in their situation, are you in a bad place? No. Yes. No. Yes. Do you feel good? No. You know what I mean? Like you're not saying anything. And
Right.
so what we always do to help people start to feel comfortable talking to us is we say something really broad and open-ended. Tell me about your situation.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean tell me about your situation that brought you into shelter today. It doesn't mean what did you have for breakfast this morning. It means tell me about your situation, and that's open to interpretation. You
Mhm.
know, we may have somebody when we say tell me about your situation that starts talking about their childhood to where they are today. We're listening the whole time and paying attention to what they're saying.
Mhm.
It may be that they're going to recant the last 24 hours and that's all they're going to say. Recant,
Mhm.
recount, whatever it is. That's all they're going to say. And so
Mhm.
there's no expectation put on somebody when you're just listening to a person tell their story. What do you
Yeah.
feel comfortable sharing? And you
Mhm.
and I talked about this multiple times before, actually. Just because I'm a person's advocate and just because I say, hey, I'm here to help you, does not instantly imply that the person I've said that to is going to trust me with the intimate details of their life.
Right.
It doesn't. And so that broad, tell me about your situation, they may start with a story that's pretty mild, for lack of a better term,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or, you know, a small incident that happened one time during this one thing.
Mhm.
I think that people do that because they're testing the waters.
Mhm.
Are you going to freak out about the thing that I just told you? Are you
Mhm.
going to care about the thing that I just told you? Are you going to overreact? Are you going to underreact? Are
Mhm.
you just completely zoned out and have no affect whatsoever? Like, how are you going to respond? And so
Mhm.
then the way that we start responding to people as we listen, then hopefully builds a relationship with them where they begin to feel comfortable saying more and more things.
Mhm.
And so then as we go through and they're saying more and more things, that's where we get to the place where we can talk about what are your hopes? What are you trying to accomplish during the time that you're
Mhm.
working with me? What are your fears? What scares you the most about
Mhm.
talking about, you know, the things that you're going through and working with me? Going back to hopes, are there resources that you need that I might know of? If you tell me what you need, then maybe I can tell you how to make that happen. And so
Mhm.
then we're beginning a partnership. So it starts with simply just
Mhm.
listening
Right.
and providing the safe space and asking those open-ended questions now becomes a dialogue. So initially, the person that
Mhm.
you're working with is doing most of the talking in theory. Now it becomes a dialogue. And as it becomes a dialogue, hopefully what's happening during the dialogue is I'm becoming more and more trustworthy. And
Mhm.
then as I become trustworthy, then you can say, well, this is what I'm afraid of, or this is what I need, but I'm not sure how to even ask what I need. And those
Mhm.
are the times then that we can even focus on, are you at a place in your life where we need to work on maybe creating a safety plan? Like, you're here in a safe place today, but do we even need a safety plan around that? And what would that look like?
Mhm.
And so again, it's all that comes out of me just sitting and saying, "Hey, what do you got to say? Let me
Mhm.
just listen to you." And so then
Mhm.
it moves into the next phase, where the next phase is inform. That's when we really get into what are the available resources. These are your needs. You just told me. These are the resources that I know that are available in the area. So now let's figure out a plan of action on how we're going to figure out what are the best resources for you. What
Mhm.
are the potential outcomes? What's good that's going to happen? What's the potential pitfall that's going to happen? But then here's the big thing. As we're going through that informational stage, hopefully we're hearing back from the person that we're working with, and the person that we're working with is going to start showing us their strengths. Hey, I'm really good at writing a letter. Hey, I'm really good at sending an email. Hey, I'm excellent at making a telephone call. So then we're going to build off of that person's strengths. I'm much better on the one-on-one.
Mhm.
So then I'm going to say, as a resource, I can help you with transportation to go to this place so you can have that one-on-one conversation. What is the person's strengths that you're working with? And so during that informational stage, you build off of that person's strengths. So then we get to the facilitate place. Now, this is pretty self explanatory, right? We've talked about now, here's all the resources that are available. Here's the ones that are going to be the best probably for you based on the scenarios that you set up for me. Let's choose a plan of action. Who do we talk to first? Here are the phone numbers. Do I need to help you make that phone call? Are you comfortable making that phone call?
Mhm.
Let's schedule dates and times. I'm going to put the dates and times that you schedule in my calendar, because if you need transportation for me, I'm going to be available to provide that transportation for you. All of that. So I'm facilitating you reaching your goals through this process. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Mhm.
And so then finally, the last stage of the life process says empower and assist. So here's the definition from the book where they're talking about empower and assist. Support them so they can advocate for themselves, thereby taking control of their life and making it safer for themselves and their children. That's another definition of empowerment right there.
I like that.
Yeah, that's more of a textbook definition, but I
Mhm.
still feel like it's kind of open to individual interpretation. Everybody sees it a little bit differently, but that's the reality is support the person until they can advocate for themselves. I
That's
mean, we do that
awesome.
for our kids when we raise our kids. We raise our
Yeah.
kids, we support our kids. The goal of raising our kids is to raise healthy, productive, functioning adults in our society.
Mhm.
But I'm going to do it for you until you can do it for yourself. And
Love it.
so you're not going to give the 7-year-old all the chores in the house. You know what I mean? You're going to give the
Right.
7-year-old, hey, grab that dust cloth and you could help me dust the furniture.
Right.
But then the 13-year-old, it's your job to dust the furniture, right? And then the 16-year-old, you can drive, you go get the groceries. We give more
Mhm.
responsibility as our children age, as they can as they can take it, so to speak.
Right.
And so in no way, shape, form, or fashion am I referring to a victim of domestic violence as a child by any means,
No.
but we do
Mm-mm.
the same thing. You bite off piece the way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Let's bite off one piece at a time.
Yeah.
And then when you're comfortable with that and you feel confident and secure in that, let's take another bite.
Mhm.
And so then at that point, my role as an advocate, or anybody's role of an advocate, is to make sure they keep chewing,
Mhm. Yeah. Good
right?
point.
Don't
Yes.
stop eating. You finished
Mhm.
that bite and it went okay, but you're not full. You know what I mean? Keep
Right.
eating, keep moving forward. Because, when your time with me at the domestic violence shelter is a limited time. So
Mhm.
let's get the most your stay. Let's get the most out of your stay as we can.
Mhm.
And again, I've said before, nobody burns bridges, but you can't live there forever.
No. Mm-mm.
So
Yeah, you don't
encouraging
have enough
to
room
move
for
forward
that.
a little bit. No. And sometimes I wish we did. Sometimes I wish that if somebody needed to be sheltered for 2 years, we could shelter them for 2 years
Right.
or a year, or whatever it is. But
Mhm.
we have such a shelter space problem in our country that we do have to have some kind of guidelines.
Yeah, you have to, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
And
that's the life process.
I like that. One thing that stands out to me, you were talking about, Well, this is where it took me. Let me just say it that way. So at the beginning, when I first came in, I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. And I was not in a point at a place where I could be like making phone calls, starting to plan things out ahead. I needed to logistically plan it out first and get that down. I didn't have the confidence I was just scared of everything at that point, Becky. I was just
And probably us.
yeah, to a degree, but I knew you were trustworthy because Carolyn said you were, and my friend who had who lived there and that she was the reason I came. Um, I knew she knew that you were good people. So wasn't that so much. It was just scared of the future, scared of him coming after me and finding out where I was. I was scared of what was going to happen after that and so forth. And I don't know if I mentioned it to you when I was there a couple of weeks ago in Branson, and we recorded at the crisis center. And but at the 20-year mark, I never thought I would live to see this day. I really didn't. I mean, I was that scared. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I was coming from. I couldn't even think about 5 years or 10 years down the road where I was going to be in my life, how different I would be. That was just 10 years was max. I couldn't even really think that far ahead. But 20 years out, I didn't think I'd be alive. I was convinced that he would find me, the physical abuse would begin, and he would end up killing me. That's literally, I mean, that's just where my mind was. So this is just such a huge milestone for me. So
Yeah.
that kind of gives you a picture of where I was. That yeah, there's no way I could begin to really truly plan for the future. I had too much that I needed to bounce off of you and your advocates and my psychologist and that kind of thing to work through all the garbage first.
And that's why too, when I talk about goal and action planning, we may have somebody come in today as their first day. And on day one, depending on how the conversation goes, we may allude to or briefly touch on goal and action planning.
Mm-hmm.
But that usually comes after a person has been there for a little bit of time under the belt. They get a little bit more comfortable. Because
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if you come with absolutely nothing but the clothing on your back, your goal and action plan is to make sure that I have food and clothing.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
You can't see past that. And
Nope.
so if we haven't even taken you to the cottage where you're going to stay, you may not even know there's going to be food and clothing in there. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? Like we have to build on that. We have
Mm-hmm.
some people that come in and they take their goal and action plan with them. And a couple days later, they have it all filled out. Like they got it. They know exactly what they want to do
Mm-hmm.
and they go. And then we have people that say, I don't even know what I want to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's too overwhelming and it's too much. And so we
Mm-hmm.
we have to cater our responses to where that person is, and we still get there, but sometimes it might take 6 weeks to fill out a goal and action
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Well,
And
and
that's okay. Like you can't put
sure.
time limits on people for things like that.
Mm-mm.
Right now where I sit today, if you ask me where I want to be in 10 years, I may not know.
Right.
And I'm not in a heightened state of crisis right now. I just haven't necessarily thought about it.
Exactly. And do you remember when you told me that story about the lady that you took to the grocery store? You were a new
Mhm.
advocate,
Mhm.
and she just she didn't know. She had no idea what she liked to eat. Do you know I heard that same kind of a story just last week when I was listening to a podcast, and this
Really?
lady, yeah, this lady's husband, they had a child together, and then he started cheating on her and he asked for a divorce, and she was just devastated. And she said that at this one point in time they were both gone from the house. The daughter had gone to live with the dad for a while after about a year or so of being separated. And she said, I went to the store and I just stood there and I realized I don't even know what I like to eat. It was an automatic thing of, oh, yeah, I need to pick up this for him and I need to pick up this for her because I know she likes that. She needs this at school.
Right.
Da 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 da. But she said, I didn't even know what I liked. And I immediately thought about that, what you had shared. And it's amazing. I mean, we don't even have to necessarily be in an abusive situation, but things can change in our lives. And we just don't even know how to navigate through that.
Right. Yeah. Very true. Very true. Do you have any other thoughts or questions about this life process before we leave it?
No, but I sure do like it, and it sure makes sense. It's to me, it's very logical.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, here's what I say about those kind of things. We give it a fancy acronym and we define it and say this is how you do it. But let's be honest. I love to refer back to the beginning of the domestic violence movement. Started as a group of women sitting around a coffee table having a conversation. And so really that's what we're doing. Like
Yeah.
when you sit and you have a conversation with a friend, when a friend calls you and says, "Hey, I need some help with this thing."
Mhm.
And you say, "Well, let's get together and talk about it." You get together in a place that's a comfortable place for you to talk.
Mhm.
Like if she said, this is going to be a really emotional conversation, you're not going to go sit in Wendy's,
Right. Right.
right? You're going to
Mm-mm.
find a more secluded spot than that. And you're
Mhm.
not just going to be like, okay, I'm here. Tell me everything.
Yeah.
You're going to check in. Hey, how's it going? How you feeling today? Isn't the weather nice? Or whatever it is to kind of
Mhm.
break the ice and get acclimated. And then you're going to little by little say, okay, well, you said you wanted to talk. What exactly did
Mhm.
you want to talk about? You're going to do the same thing.
Mhm. Yep.
That's what we do when we communicate with people and we really people that we care about, that we want to help them try to process through whatever it is they're going through in their life. So a lot of it's
Mhm.
common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the work that we do as advocates, honestly, is common sense.
Mhm.
But when you're somebody who is in such a heightened state of crisis,
Yeah.
your common sense isn't the first thing that's going to come out.
Mm-mm.
And so then to have that voice of reason, for lack of a better term, that says, now, wait a minute, let's think about that,
Yeah.
makes all the difference in the world.
It does.
And so anybody listening to us talk right now can do it.
Yeah.
They probably already have. I always say if you've raised children, you've done it.
Yeah.
When your kid comes home hanging a face and you say, "What's the matter?" and they say, "I don't want to talk," right?
Yeah.
What do? You will talk to me. Start talking. You don't do that.
No.
If you're like me, you give the kids some space.
Yep.
Maybe they want to go to my son would notoriously go to his room and start playing a video game. And I'd eventually work my way in there.
Mhm.
How was your day? Right?
Mhm. Yep.
And then eventually they start to open up and tell you those things. And so we
Mhm.
all know how to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I think is really exciting, for lack of a better word. The things that we're talking about, most people are equipped to be able to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we can't advocate for other people even if we don't think that we can.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because if you're any kind of a caring person, you have that
Mhm.
friend, or you wouldn't be. I'm turning it around backwards. You have that friend because you are a caring person. So
Right.
because you care, you're going to do it at a relaxed pace for them to be able to totally open up and
Yeah.
share what they need to share. That obviously they have something on their mind.
Right.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's a difference between being a friend and being an advocate. And, we've talked about that before too,
Mhm.
but I'm just talking about the root of some of these things is we all
Yeah.
innately kind of know how to help somebody process through a crisis.
Mhm.
Hopefully.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
guess not
exactly.
everybody. I guess I shouldn't make that blanket statement, but a lot of people do.
And if they don't know how, just be available to listen. Bottom
And
line.
sometimes that's all somebody needs. If you're
Mhm.
talking about me personally, I'm the kind of person, if I'm going through something, I go through it internally first.
Mhm.
And so I go through it all the way around, process through it internally. When I'm ready to talk about it, I've already resolved it
Mhm.
internally, but I need to say it out loud to finish that process for me.
Mhm.
Now, if I voice it, then it's done.
Yeah.
So I've got all those thoughts milling around in there. What I need is somebody to listen to me and hear me say the things that I need to say and kind of
Mhm.
validate my experience, so to speak.
Right.
So some people are wired like that. Wired, not weird. Wired.
Just switch those letters around, right? Well, actually, I'm looking at the clock, and this is pretty much almost an episode right here. Shall we go ahead and cut that off and start over again for the advocacy wheel in the next episode?
Really? How long have we been talking?
Over 24 minutes.
Huh. We can if you want to.
All right. Well, folks, join us next time, and we will pick this back up with the advocacy wheel. Remember that no matter where you are in this process, you're always free to soar.